What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy show with me, your host, Tara Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, January 14th. I'm taking your questions live, and we're going to dive right in. I've got a nice wide variety of topics. This is kind of a catch-all episode. We're going to be talking big changes, obviously updates with players post wildcard, coaches, as we had more firings happen. So we've got a couple of landing spots for coaches that we need to talk about. And obviously we've had a ridiculous amount of interviews. I'm not going to lie. I have not kept up with the interviews. I don't know how anyone physically, I mean, like there's a list, right? But I just trying to wrap your mind around all of the interviews happening on a daily basis is just wild at this point. But we'll talk about openings and everything and Harbaugh and all this. So all of the stuff going on. My brain is broken, people. I, an hour ago, just did a live basketball, NBA and college basketball betting show. I still have PGA DFS lines to make for the Sony Open, although I did use my time in between shows effectively. So I think I'm almost there to being done with that. But this is this is a crazy time of year. So yeah, if you guys need any other sports, feel free to come to me. I keep them off of my YouTube channel because it's the YouTube channel is just fantasy football. This podcast, Dear Miss Fantasy, just football. Obviously, we talk about rookies and free agency and all that stuff that ties into fantasy football, but it is exclusively fantasy football related. But you can catch me on other platforms doing a wide variety of betting for other sports that I do love. So I my brain is like all over the place. Good Lord. So we're gonna calm it down right now, and we're going to go back to football, which is always calm for me. Football is like my calming little happy place here. But yeah, we've got a ton to talk about here. And right off the bat, because Jeff Rogers got in here before the show and dropped a question, we're gonna tackle that one right away. And the question is, and I love this. Thank you for this question, Jeff. What rookie will be the best in fantasy football in 2026, in your opinion? So, natural instincts are, it's funny, you can break it down by position. The easiest one to translate to immediate production is wide receiver, right? Because as long as you, even if you don't land into the best landing spot, right? Because, you look at Tedero McMillan landing with, number one wide receiver off the board, last year landing with Carolina. Not the best landing spot in the world, but you jump into a wide receiver one position, you have talent. So it's not the worst thing in the world. I say wide receivers often end up in the best situations. Then we got rookie running back. We'll talk about running backs, but you got rookies and their landing spots are often very precarious, right? Their ability to thrive in their year is heavily based on landing spot, whereas a wide receiver can thrive anywhere. And those first round picks, the rookies are very heavily dependent on landing spot. And then quarterback, obviously, unfortunately, is a super narrowed pool. Unfortunately, this year, because Dante Moore pulled a fast one on us and said he didn't say this, but I'm sure in the back of his mind, or probably in the front, all over his mind, he is not wanting to be a New York Jet. And I don't blame him on that. I get it. You want to start your career off in a positive way, and no career in a while has started off in a positive way for the New York Jets, unless you're a defensive player, obviously. So yeah, unfortunately, we are running into a situation where we are now probably going to be short on quarterback. And we have a situation where we desperately need quarterbacks at multiple locations. So it is going to be very interesting. Shout out to the Raiders for doing what they had to do to get that first overall pick, so they don't have to worry about the drama. They get their Fernando Mendoza and they don't have to deal with it. So yeah, it'll be interesting. So I'm kind of nixing quarterback out of the situation because obviously Mendoza, maybe Ty Simpson, right? But Mendoza is really the only realistic option there. The one that I think will be the best in fantasy football, I'm willing to take a risk and say that it will be Jeremiah Love. And again, running back is very precarious, right? But and it doesn't help that. So when I'm looking at my landing spots, right? So let's go through my landing spots. I don't think we covered this on the last episode. Yeah, we'll do this is like a free discussion, right? Ad hoc. So Jeremiah Love, first running back off the board. The places that he is being mocked to, which makes a lot of sense, right? Just off the top of my head, the places that he is being mocked to is going to be, and side note, because Jeff Rogers just dropped a comment saying, no matter what year Moore comes out, the Jets will still be in a position to take him. 100%. I 100% agree. Like, you're delaying the inevitable, buddy. They're still going to have a top pick. They're still going to be able to take you. So you probably, I think he should have come out and taken the money. I understand, but the odds of you being drafted by a team that is in a better situation, it doesn't happen, unfortunately, right? So I think you should have come out and taken the money, because as we've seen with quarterbacks in the past, there's no guarantee that you won't get injured and have something mess up your draft stock, or you won't have a down year. So we'll see on that one. But landing spots for running backs for Jeremiah Love. Often mocked to teams like Kansas City, Minnesota, New Orleans. I've seen mocks to Dallas. I don't think that's going to happen, people. I do think I believe Dallas when they say that they are going to re-sign Javonte Williams. I'm on board with that. So realistically, the ones that I'm looking at, again, my rankings that I have for my landing spots for running backs are Kansas City, Minnesota, Dallas, but again, I do not think that is going to be an option. Houston, we have to look at Houston. That is an interesting one. I don't think that, because of the position that they're in, I don't think they'll take one in the first round, but it is one of my better preferred landing spots, just because we have to see what happens with Joe Mixon, but he's of an elevated age. We'll say it that way. He's of an elevated age. So and Woody Marks obviously was fantastic, but there's no loyalty, as we've seen in the past with Houston, in terms of those day 2 or day 3 running backs. So I think there's still a potential landing spot. Then we have Jacksonville if they do not re-sign Travis Etienne. New Orleans is often listed as a landing spot for Jeremiah Love. I hate that. I was actually looking at a CBS mock draft that had New Orleans taking Jeremiah Love. I don't love that. And long term, not bad, right? Long term, not a bad situation, because eventually Alvin Kamara will be out of there. But I think I would hate to see it be forced into a weird committee, since he's refusing to leave, and I don't genuinely think he cares if they end up benching him or moving on to another running back. It sounds like he is standing his ground and he's not going to leave. After that is Washington. That's another popular landing spot. I don't like that. We'll see what ultimately their offensive vision, but still genuinely not my preferred option. The New York Jets, if they do not re-sign Breece Hall, I think they're going to franchise tag Breece Hall. Carolina is another one, because obviously we have running back situations in flux with them. And then Seattle, provided I think they'll move on from Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker would like to be moved on from. And I don't know if they would completely hand it over to Zach Charbonnet 100%. So that's going quite on down the list. But Jeremiah Love in Kansas City, I can get on board. And I don't think they have a problem with taking a run. Well, we know they don't mind taking a running back in the first round. So I think that's a really realistic possibility if he were to fall that far. Do I think he will fall? Now, granted, you don't have to fall that far. It's not in previous years where it's Kansas City with a 30th or 31st draft pick or 32nd, right? So it's a possibility. Minnesota, I think, is very realistic. They do have both Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason in contract in 2026. I don't think that's a solution. That's a patchwork thing, right? So in my opinion, I think that Minnesota is a very realistic landing spot for him. So in case they want to go that direction. And I wouldn't mind that, all right? Hopefully the offense can progress forward with JJ McCarthy. But ultimately, our preferred option would be getting him to Kansas City, because if they have the personnel, I do think, and Jeremiah Love is the personnel, I do think they would commit to him as a 3-down back and not force, this repeated annoying committee. Because you can be successful as a running back in Kansas City's offense, provided they let you be the running back. So if they spend a first on him, I believe they would. Leaving said, yes, CEH, that worked out. We're traumatized off that one. We're not going to lie. We're traumatized off that one for real. We would be apprehensive with our draft pick. But if he lands there, that's my preferred location for him. Jumping back to the chat here, guys. Let's see here from Streetlytics. Love your Thank you. Appreciate that. Puka, the 101 in next draft. What do you think? Yes, he is him. It's Puka Nacua. You can't. The fact that he was able to, because I was worried. I'm not gonna lie. I'll be 100% upfront. I was kind of worried about Puka with Davante Adams coming into the team because Davante is Davante, and whatever happened in the New York Jets, though, that was not his issue. There was no regression. I felt super confident. And I was worried that he would be a significant threat to Puka from a touchdown perspective because of the red zone opportunities that he'd probably have. That was correct. What was incorrect on that one is that would matter. It didn't matter because Matt Stafford is more than capable of providing all the volume humanly possible to Puka Nacua, even if he is targeting Davante Adams at an absolutely ridiculous rate in the red zone. So the fact that Puka stood his ground against Davante Adams, and Davante was, very solid aside from, the injury, right? But also I kind of question if they were in a position where they actually needed Davante. I question if they would have played him sooner, right? But regardless, I think Puka more than justified it. For me, he really separated himself, right? Because people will make the arguments with Jamar Chase, and occasionally Jamar Chase does disappear. It's very frustrating. Occasionally he does disappear, and often it is whenever I play him in DFS, and stack it with Joe Burrow, and inevitably it's T that goes off. But I think Puka clearly separated himself. There's a gap between him and Jamar and JSN and Amon-Ra, who's very solid, right? But you just don't get that ceiling. You don't get that ceiling. So yeah, Puka with the 101. He's so different. He's so different, 100%. Yeah, we had the comment from Jeff Rogers on Dante Moore. Good one here from Burkham. Thoughts on CMC next season. So why did I not have my rankings pulled up? That's a rookie mistake there, Tara. I'm going to pull up my rankings for you guys. Luckily, I'm using this computer on the side that has excellent speed. So we're getting that pulled up super quick here, and it does not affect the stream. So I'm a happy camper. I have CMC as my number 3 running back off the board. With CMC, considering that what he was able to do with the fact that half of this season, and no offense to Mac Jones, love Mac Jones, and love Mac Jones for what he does for us from a fantasy football perspective, love Mac Jones for being my QB3 in Superflex that really carried me through when Lamar was not. And so no offense to him, but the fact that, CMC was able to do all of this in a season where the offense was really piecemealed together with wide receivers, and additional wide receivers might make you think, okay, it'll limit the pass catching upside. No, I think it'll open up opportunities, right? The opportunity for him to thrive on the ground because they have actual threats at receiver. So I anticipate San Francisco getting an actual wide receiver one that they can rely on, since I don't know if that they can rely on Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings is a free agent. I think he'll go wherever the money is. He's not a true wide receiver one either. So Christian McCaffrey, my 3rd overall running back, I feel good about it. I would run him back as a first-round pick. Again, workload as a whole. Let's check it out and see if I can pull up the overall workload that he had this year in terms of touches. 311. That's not good. 311 carries and 102 receptions for a 400 plus touch season. That's so I like to be, and I don't hold myself 100% to this, but I like to be apprehensive in terms of drafting people off of extreme aggressive workloads because of the obvious regression that often comes off of those workloads. But it is CMC. And we have I kind of lean towards giving it a go there. And we've seen him this was an aggressive workload. I'm really honestly surprised that they had to, right? Because of the lack of talent. But he'll still be a first round pick. But again, we do got to be a little bit cautious about that workload that he had, because that's an egregious amount of touches. That's a ridiculous amount of touches. So we'll have to monitor and see if there are any nagging, lingering injuries. But the good thing is that we've got enough evidence. So he'll all off season, like in best balls, we'll be taking him, right? But all off season, at least we know that if we ever get any of those reports that he's got he's just dealing with let's say a little foot injury, a little knee injury, a little calf injury or something, we know we've got enough evidence to know that means that we're probably hitting a fade time period, right? So for right now, I'm okay. But again, be a little cautious because that workload was aggressive for him. What's up, Albert Moroccan? From Jeff Rogers, is Jefferson out of the first round, out as a first round pick next season? What do you think if AJ Brown is out in Philadelphia? So I have moved Jefferson back. Unfortunately, he will not be a first round pick for me. I think he will still be a second round pick, a late second round pick. I don't feel comfortable taking him any higher than that at best. He is my wide receiver. Jefferson. He is my wide receiver 10. And that's a wee bit in flux, right? Because again, that does involve the lack of clarity around AJ Brown. We got to get George Pickens re-signed to Dallas in order to keep him a little bit higher up there. Chris Olave, I have fairly high as a Q. I could move Chris Olave ahead of him. I have Malik Neighbors ahead of him, but quite frankly, that will probably adjust because of the fact that progression in terms of rehab is looking a little questionable right now for Malik Neighbors. So we got to keep our eye on that one. But he is absolutely falling at the bare minimum behind Nico Collins, and then obviously Rashee Rice and his little potential wide variety of legal issues that always pop up, and have already popped up. But Nico Collins I would not ever move him above Nico Collins. So my natural default, he cannot be a first round pick. So yes, second round pick, feel more comfortable with him as a low end second round pick. Quite frankly, round 3 would make me more comfortable. There are a lot of players that we're going to see a lot of movement, right? In terms of players who have been in the first round who are going to be moving out. Saquon Barkley is one of them. He'll be moving out of the first round. In contrast to Justin Jefferson, I feel a lot more comfortable with the drop we are getting on Saquon Barkley, and I will be drafting a lot of him, full disclosure. I'm in on a bounce back season. I do think that his overall performance this year was one result of the struggles of the Philadelphia offense as a whole, but also more of an issue of him coming off we talked about with CMC, such an aggressive workload that he had last season, over 340 carries plus the Super Bowl, the run all the way to the Super Bowl. So I think he's in line for a bounce back season. Justin Jefferson, and I just don't know how much I believe in JJ McCarthy, which is sad because I've got a dynasty share. So I do need to get believing, but I'm a little bit skeptical of him as a whole. He just, from a fantasy perspective of him individually, I can get on board just because he's got the rushing upside, right? And he can thrive without his receivers necessarily thriving. But he did not speak to me in any way, shape, or form as a passer. And we know based off college that, we didn't see a ton of high volume from him. And we thought, okay, well, the talent's there. They didn't really use him in that way in college just because of the way the offense ran. But when we're looking at him and what he put up this season, and to be fair to him, this was his first season, but I didn't feel anything, right? I felt stuff with Bo Nix, right? You felt positively, you saw the progression that he could make in the NFL. Jaden Daniels, obviously, no question, right? Drake May, guy in a bad situation, you knew that there was going to be that progress as they moved forward under a new coach and with new weapons and whatnot. I just don't feel that way about JJ McCarthy. So he's got a lot to prove to me from that end. From a fantasy perspective, draft like him individually, it's fine. You're rushing upside. But with his pass catchers, man, they are falling on back. Jordan Addison taking an aggressive tumble there. I have Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison is ranked as, I'm not going to be able to find him. That's how far he's gone back. Wide receiver 44 for me. That's disgusting. I've got him behind guys like Alec Pierce, Travis Hunter, Michael Wilson, regardless of obviously quarterback. We assume Kyler Murray is going to be kaput there. I saw people floating around as jokes, Kyler Murray to the Jets, because obviously they're not going to be able to draft their ideal quarterback with Dante Moore staying. I don't think financially they would want to do that, but it seems that sounds like a Jets thing to do. So if Arizona was looking for a trade partner, perhaps that's one that would take the bait there. But yeah, unfortunately, Jefferson is moving on back. Third round is where I feel comfortable. Late round 2 is the realistic situation there. What's up to Tip Major? How you doing tonight? Thank you for tuning in, my friend. Thank you so much. From Tri Lambs, of all the rookie quarterbacks from the past season, which one do you think makes the biggest jump this season? Well, based off my conversation just now, I guess we can rule out JJ McCarthy. I think Jackson Dart. I think Jackson Dart. My only fear with Jackson Dart is that one, and I think I talked about it in the last episode, I have slight concerns that he the volume was inconsistent. Now, granted, the good thing is that he does fit the profile of Drake May in terms of somebody who had a bad offensive line, who did not have his wide receiver 1 because of injury, right? So had no wide receiver 1, and was still putting up numbers based off his rushing upside, right? So he could have that same progression under a new coach, better situation. I do expect the Giants to draft another wide receiver. I saw somebody mock Carnell Tate to the Giants. I don't hate that. That would be quite the combination of him and Malik Neighbors. So while I do have fear about Malik Neighbors starting off the season healthy, I do think that they will draft another wide receiver. So perhaps that will kind of nix that in terms of being an issue. But I think Jackson Dart is the one that I trust the most. Dark horse candidate, though, I would not put it past Tyler Shuck to make a leap next year. And that's saying a lot because I had no belief in Tyler Shuck. But I quite enjoyed playing him towards the end of the season as a solid streaming option. You guys know he was one of my heavily most recommended streaming options towards the end of the season. If you follow me for DFS, you know that we were jumping on that with Tyler Shuck, and it paid off. It paid off so good. So when we're looking at him, his rushing upside, the connection he had with Chris Olave being Chris Olave, the assumption that they probably will draft another wide receiver, lots of retooling. So hopefully they can kind of push forward out of this funk, and he'll have an entire offseason to prepare as a starter. Yeah, that's kind of like my little dark horse there. But yeah, I think ultimately it'll be Jackson Dart. But dark horse there, Tyler Shuck. I'm just saying. From Easy E. Doing my homework for next year, and this year, the first year, I'm shying away from Josh Jacobs. Just think there's not much tread left. You know, I think that Jacobs could be in line for a little bit of a bounce back year heading here. And I'm not surprised. No, granted, it wasn't a bad year, but I'm not surprised he regressed a little bit, because that's another one who was well over 300 total touches, over 300 carries, just barely over 300 carries last year. So I do think it's possible that the aggressive workload that he had last year had something to do with this year's production, because this year was underwhelming, right? You do have to start wondering, like, hey, at what point are we? Because he's getting on up there in age, he's getting a little seasoned, but I don't think he's completely there yet. So I'm not falling off of him too much. But he has, the only concern that I have is that we won't be getting a discount on his ADP whatsoever. He's going to be rolling right along where he was last year. I think maybe like a couple spots, if I recall, like a couple spots later. But we're not getting much of a discount on his ADP, because a lot of those kind of borderline RB1s, the high-end RB2 running backs have question marks in terms of workload. It'll be your guys like, is Sean Payton going to continue the full commit to RJ Harvey as the RB1? What happens with Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson? Can we trust Travion Henderson as an RB1? Omarion Hampton. Can we trust Omarion Hampton? We got to talk about that one. Can we trust Omarion Hampton as an RB1? Let's pivot. Yeah, so he'll fall above those guys by default Jacobs because he does not have any question marks about his workload. In the end of the season split that he had with Emmanuel Wilson, who also is a free agent, but the end of the season split that he had with Emmanuel Wilson was more of the injury issue. He looked a lot better in the playoff game, fully healthy off. I say a lot. He looked better-ish in the playoff game, fully healthy there. So I think it's not a complete fade next season, but lack of discount on the ADP is kind of irritating, but understandable because he's in a question mark area. But I did want to touch on Omarion Hampton real quick here because I spoke last week's episode, and I think I've talked about it in a couple of videos. A little bit of skepticism around Omarion Hampton and his workload heading into 2026 because where he is being drafted is a top 10 back. Is where he will be ranked is a top 10 back. And I felt a little bit apprehensive about that because of the commitment to the committee, right? They love Kamani Vidal. When we saw that true top 5 upside from Omarion Hampton, that was immediately after Najee Harris went down with the injury and before they started using Kamani Vidal. Once Omarion Hampton came back from the injury and Kamani Vidal was active and healthy, it was, he was the lead back, but Vidal was putting, just enough of a dent into the workload that it was annoying and it took away from him having that true top 10 upside. So I was very hesitant on, fully prepared to be very, very much so hesitant on his ADP, but the Chargers took swift action. I was a little surprised. I did not think that they were going to do that, but they took very swift action in firing Greg Roman. And the poor offensive line coach got the boot as well. I feel bad for him because I don't understand what exactly he could have done to negate the fact that Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt went down. I don't know how you recover from that. But unfortunately, he had to be a little sacrificial lamb there. But when we're looking at the exit of Greg Roman, this now makes the Chargers so first of all, the Chargers, for anyone looking to make that leap from a pass game coordinator to an offensive coordinator, the Chargers will be your top location of your ideal job position, right? So they're going to be a highly appealing location. You get to go work with a plethora of strong across the board wide receivers, solid young tight end and Aronde Gadsden. You got excellent, Omarion Hampton, Justin Herbert. You can't ask for a better situation to fall into of available options, right? So what if we get a nice little up and coming offensive guru into the LA Chargers and someone who actually wants to use Omarion Hampton as a 3-down back because he can pass catch. He's a perfect 3-down back here. So I'm getting very excited about the possibility. This will be one that I am following the closest there, especially because not just for Omarion Hampton, right? Because we're never going to get a discount on Omarion Hampton's ADP. People love him. But we're going to get a discount on those Chargers wide receivers. We're getting Ladd McConkey will not be drafted as a top 24 receiver. It's not going to happen. Quentin Johnston obviously will come a little bit later than that. Trey Harris showed very well. Keenan Allen is a free agent. You got to keep that in mind. We'll see if they let him go, but if they let him go, that would open up the door wide open for Trey Harris. So I'm very excited to see, where all of this lands for the Chargers. This is probably the one that I'm good, obviously, other than the head coaching stuff, but honestly, from a fantasy perspective, this might be the most critical one for us. So just FYI, follow this one closely, be ahead of the game on this one because especially like for best ball and like dynasty guys, maybe you want to go ahead and make your investment into trading for these Chargers receivers. I already got my Quentin Johnston. So maybe you go ahead and do that because it'll be very interesting to see where they land from an offensive perspective because Greg Roman was probably the one that was aggressively driving the committee vision. So I can get back on board. Let's get air raid in there. Let's get high volume pass. Like just open it up, man. You got Justin Herbert. Open it up. It's going to be better because both of the injured linemen should be back in time for the beginning of the season there. So I don't think there's a threat there. So yay, right on that one. I'm feeling super good about it. I'm jumping back to the chat here, guys, and then we'll take a little bit of a quick break. From leaving, carries in the fourth quarter with the lead were insane as a 49ers fan. Yeah, I'm kind of, but I feel like Kyle Shanahan has been a wee bit, he was a little reckless last year with the work. I feel like he has no problem being a little reckless with the workload. He'll tell us, man, we want to limit carries a little bit. And then all of a sudden we're looking at like, why is CMC touching the ball this much? This doesn't make logical sense. I don't know. But he has a vision and he's sticking with it. If the Vikings go with the vet quarterback bridge, would you change the rankings? I think so. I think the Vikings are going to make it work with JJ McCarthy. So no, I don't think they're going to revert. If you try to revert, I mean, they could, right? We saw it, but I don't think they'll head into the season trying to revert. If they try to revert, it would be an in-season thing, like we saw with Bryce Young, getting benched for a couple of games for Andy Dalton, and then get your head on right and come back strong. But I think we're stuck with JJ McCarthy there. Comment from Johansson: Seahawks Super Bowl winners, very realistic. We'll see. We will see. Their defense is so strong. They lean aggressively on the run. FYI, I love the Seattle running backs this week for betting or DFS or anything like that, guys. Do love the Seattle running backs in this matchup to run it back, and because we just saw this matchup, right? But to really thrive here. From Johansson, the Jets can have Jalen Milroe for first and second round picks. Man, that would be like a repeat there. I'm not convinced Jalen Milroe can throw much better than Justin Fields. Hyper athletic though. From Jeff Rogers, coming off an injury. Ooh, good question here. Coming off an injury, what round should we draft Skattebo? So right now, I have him ranked as RB 20. And this could adjust because where he is ranked is right ahead of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Obviously, assuming those two separate with Walker's free agency, both of them would go ahead of Skattebo. Then we have DeAndre Swift, Jalen Warren, Rico Dowdle, which obviously is a kind of weird situation there with Carolina if he exits. I assume he would try to exit and find a starting role somewhere. I don't know where the ideal landing spot would be because, again, running back landing spots are weird. We don't have a lot of very clear 100%, 3-down openings. Like Vegas last year, we knew that's a landing spot that's a clear 100% 3-down back opening. We don't have that, unfortunately, this year for free agency or draft. And then obviously poor Quinshon Judkins. And then Woody Marks following back as well. We have to see if he's able to retain. So there's a lot of players that are in flux here. And Skattebo gets the jump on them, just assuming that he comes back healthy. I do like him a lot. Not going to lie, I've not looked into the type of surgery that he had because a lot of times the type of surgery the technique that they take with it can affect how you're able to bounce back. So that can, push things back a little bit here. But I would feel more comfortable with Skattebo maybe around round 6 or so is ultimately where I would see it shaking out there. Dead zone running back with promise. We don't want to draft him as an RB1, but we can take that risk on him for sure. What's up to Try Lambs from leaving? Najee has his eye on the job. If he makes it back, yeah. But I worry for him. I worry because he's not super old, right? But he's got a lot of mileage on him, unfortunately. And we got a lot of mileage injury that does not do well in terms of aging and mileage. I would hate to see it, but my gut when it first happened was, oh my God, this is just the spot where Najee Harris's career disappears on us. So he might have his eye on it, but ultimately I fear for him, sadly there. And I hate that for him because I think he's still very much so worthy of being a committee, 1B kind of guy, but I fear the Achilles for running back is going to take him out there, unfortunately. From Watashi International. Perfect question. I love this. Where do you rank Parker Washington and Luther Burden next year? So this one is fun. In my video that I just dropped for Wildcard Weekend Takeaways on my YouTube channel, I talked about the Jags receivers and the excitement and low-key fear that I have for them next year. So for right now, Parker Washington, unfortunately, does fall. And there's some flexibility that can come in this. But right now, he is absolutely a late round pick for me, unfortunately. The rookies, depending on their landing spots, your rookies like Carnell Tate and them, they will all probably go ahead of him. The problem with Parker Washington and why I have him ranked so low, and honestly, right now it's wide receiver. And, it's egregious. It's wide receiver 59. But the problem is that I would rank him 10 times over. 10 of these guys ranked ahead of him very easy if I knew he was going to be a starter. The problem is that we have not seen this Jacksonville offense with Jakobi Meyers, Parker Washington, Brian Thomas Jr., and Travis Hunter. And Travis Hunter will be back. He will be healthy. So seeing how all this shakes out is going to be kind of weird, right? Because Parker Washington has been undeniably the best receiver. And I love that for him. We had a good wild card weekend DFS with Parker Washington. That was wildcard DF. Side note, wildcard DF. I'm very hot right now in terms of DFS. So if y'all like, and especially and a little bit in betting as well. So if you play DFS, we're running hot right now. So lock in with me. Ran Parker Washington and Jalen Coker last week. Good Lord, it was beautiful. Parker Washington has been undoubtedly the best receiver out there for Trevor Lawrence. And that's no insult to Jakobi Meyers. There's no issue with Jakobi Meyers. But apples to apples, the connection between Parker Washington and Trevor Lawrence has been incredible. And I think we got to give Parker Washington a little bit of grace there because it's not as if he is a, let's say Kendrick Bourne. It's not as if it's like a Kendrick Bourne in New England kind of, yeah, that's a perfect scenario. Kendrick Bourne in New England, right? Where he emerged. I loved him in New England. I thought they did him dirty. But Kendrick Bourne in New England, he did well, stepped up, had some moments there, but he was older, right? And at no point did you ever think that it was a breakout opportunity for Kendrick Bourne, because at some point, once you progress in your career, that's it. And, you doing well is just kind of one-offs, and it's not a trend of like, okay, this is a leap that he's going to make in his career. But Parker Washington was just in his third year this year. And he showed some promise last year. So it's very realistic that this year was just straight up his leap, right? And he did not become an official starter until around week 7 or so is when he became an official starter. He had a couple of starts before then where he had, upwards of 80, like maybe like one or two. I think maybe one, where he had upwards of 80% of snaps. And but prior to that, not getting wide receiver or starter wide receiver workload whatsoever. So once he became an official starter, he played with both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, and consistently and Jakobi Meyers once he arrived, and consistently looked excellent. So I would not be shocked if he was able to be a starter in this offense. But at the same time, you wonder how would they make it work? Because you have Travis Hunter, right? And we do know that Travis Hunter, they said, is going to continue to play both ways. Okay. Which is, and it makes sense maybe if they feel like their receiving core is strong enough that they don't have to play him significant. We'll see how it works out. But they say he's going to still play both ways. But at the end of the day, still a receiver. Brian Thomas Jr., you wonder, was this just a down year and does he bounce back? And then obviously Jakobi Meyers was strong once he got over to the Jags, right? So if Parker Washington, let's say if Parker Washington were to get upwards of 60% of snaps in every single game, I would rank him easily in the kind of wide receiver 40 to 45 range is where I would feel comfortable, and he would be a solid flex option for me. But because of the fact that he is theoretically odd man out in terms of them giving that contract to Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr., the incredible draft capital, the upside that we saw in his rookie year, incredible draft capital to Travis Hunter, like I kind of, yeah. And then leaving is also saying, then on top of that, you've got Travis Etienne, who we'll see if they retain him. But I think theoretically, Liam Cohen clearly likes him, clearly trusts him. I think the trade of Tank Bigsby was more of an indication of their faith in Travis Etienne and then Brenton Strange as well. So it's a lot going on there. So I'm super high on Trevor Lawrence because he has weapons on top of weapons, right? This is a good situation for him. But the wide receivers are going to be weird to figure out. So we're going to have some kind of indication and pay attention during the offseason to see if we can really get a feel for what the split is going to be in terms of workload, because they're 4 deep realistically. And the best performing one is theoretically number 4. So yeah, I'm a believer in Parker Washington. But we'll see how it works out. Luther Burden. I will be ranking. So Luther Burden, I have been he is my wide receiver 33 right now. And that can adjust because right now that is behind guys like Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, no, actually there's not a ton of leeway there. It's going to stay. He's going to stay in that wide receiver 30 to 35 range. I can't see a lot of change in there. So right now he is my wide receiver 33. My hesitation, and that's literally right behind Roma Dunze, my hesitation, and I think he is the most reliable, dependable Chicago wide receiver. But I don't know if that consistency carries over. I don't know how much I trust the workload of the wide receivers as a whole. Now, it's entirely possible. We'll have to see how, playoffs shake out here. It's entirely possible that maybe they offload DJ Moore because obviously there are teams that need wide receiver ones, and Chicago has wide receivers to spare. But I don't know if they offload him, if they make this push, right? So we're looking at Luther Burden. He's wide receiver 3 territory for me in terms of rankings. I feel super comfortable with him as a flex option. I think he will be the most reliable Chicago pass catcher. But Chicago and the way that they spread the ball around and the way that Caleb Williams spreads the ball around, he does not lock in on one specific target, right? And because we saw the ascendance, we're seeing the ascendance of Colston Loveland, I can't push him up above that. So I feel good about him as a flex option, but I think the ceiling and consistency is going to be capped as we continue to have this issue. So again, the Chicago wide receivers will fall into the same area of an issue with me of hey, unfortunately, we're struggling with you guys in terms of being able to push you up higher just because there's so much talent to get to. So it pushes you out of being top 24 range naturally here. A couple more questions here in the chat. I am going to take us a quick break. I should have done it a little bit early, but we'll be right back. We're just going to hear a super quick word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back after this because you guys are dropping the questions here. We got more to cover. We'll spend about 15 or so minutes here.
Oh, working out so important for your health, for your sex life, for everything, just everything in general. I perform better across the board, podcasting, you name it. The last thing I need to be thinking about is, creating a new workout routine. That's why we have FITBOD. It prevents you from plateauing. It's so customizable in that I have one super strong shoulder and one kind of weak shoulder. And yet the FITBOD app helps me customize my workouts to improve the strength and the endurance. I go in, my physical therapist is like, I can't believe you're doing this many. And I'm like, I know. Can you believe this? And he's like, yeah, this is crazy. So level up your workouts. They have over 1,000 demonstration videos. And join FITBOD today to get your personalized workout plan, which includes 25% off, or try the app for free for 7 days. Go to fitbod.me/player, fitbod.me/player, FITBOD/player. for 25% off or 7 days free.
All right, jumping back to the chat here from Jeff Rogers. Marvin Harrison Jr. should be healthy next year. So where do you put Michael Wilson? So this is 100% dependent on. So I'm ranking assuming Kyler Murray is kaput, right? Because if it were Kyler Murray at quarterback, I can't get on board. But I don't see, like, if I were Michael Wilson and Trey McBride, I would hold a protest outside of the stadium if they had the audacity to bring sorry, I would if they had the audacity to bring Kyler Murray back. You sit there, like, we saw years of sitting here, like, just like, not years. I mean, he's not old. Like, multiple years of wanting Trey McBride to have touchdowns, right? Like, can we please get a touchdown for Trey McBride? And all it took was Jacoby Brissett coming in and touchdowns raining, like it was it was so easy all along. So yes, I'm assuming there is no way that they do that to those players and bring back Kyler Murray. I don't know how they get off that contract and whatnot, but hey, we've seen it. We've seen teams move on and eat contracts and whatnot. So perhaps he'll stay on roster. We'll see. But looking at Michael Wilson right now, I have him ranked as wide receiver 41. But that does have wiggle room. A little bit of wiggle room, not a ton. That's a pretty solid place for him. I could move him up a couple of spots, but I feel like that's still a pretty positive location for him. That puts him ahead for me of DJ Moore, Jaden Higgins, who was Jaden Higgins is an interesting one to watch because we got to remember, obviously, there's Tank Dell hopefully at some point he can come back and exist. So yeah, the Jaden Higgins is an interesting one for me. So I would have Michael Wilson above Jordan Addison. Juwan Jennings, obviously, we got to figure out where he is going to be next season. Wan'Dale Robinson, another one where we got to figure out where he's going to be next season. Khalil Shakir. But it starts to get into Jaden Reed, right? So it starts to get into that range of guys who have, roles or, but don't have the level of upside that a Michael Wilson has. As long as we have a different quarterback that is not named Kyler Murray, I feel good about Michael Wilson because of his ability. He separated himself from the rest of the pack, right? In terms of being the clear, when Marvin Harrison Jr. is healthy, being the clear third look in that offense. That is the problem, is that with Trey McBride there, it defaults him to being the third look in the offense. But quite frankly, it is entirely possible that we see whatever quarterback there is, albeit Jacoby Brissett, which I think makes a lot of sense. Keeping Jacoby, they have him under contract for another year. Perhaps they bridge with a young quarterback. There's not a ton of options, right? So if it's Jacoby Brissett or a young quarterback bridge, right? I feel positively about Michael Wilson still being a relevant flex option, even with Marvin Harrison Jr. returning, because Marvin Harrison Jr. just has his issues, man. He still has stuff that he has to develop. There were still, when he granted he was playing, injured theoretically, and limited, but there were drops. There were things that should have been clear catches. And it was just like, you don't look like the true wide receiver one. I would never, look at him the same way I look at Malik Neighbors now, right? Unfortunately. So I think it's entirely possible that if the increased reliability continues to lean over with Michael Wilson, that you can see whatever quarterback there is tilting that direction if Marvin Harrison Jr. continues to be kind of shaky on that end. So still in flex worthy range, more of a wide receiver 4 for me, Michael Wilson, with Marvin Harrison Jr. active and healthy next season. From Henry Odom, if Pickens stays with the Cowboys, I'm overreacting to Lamb being a first round pick and redraft over someone like Drake London. I think that's very reasonable. I will not be, by no means would CeeDee be a fade for me, but I do think that we would have to roll him back a little bit, right? Because where do I have him ranked right now? Yeah, so right now I have him, right now my rankings are agnostic of George Pickens remaining in Dallas. I have CeeDee at wide receiver 4. and Pickens at wide receiver 13. If Pickens were to be extended, now granted, Pickens in a contract might be a different version of George Pickens, just FYI, Pickens in contract might be a different version than the George Pickens that was trying to get his contract, right? Once you get paid and you are a wide receiver that tends to have some, consistency issues, some upset attitude issues sometimes. Sometimes that can linger the wrong direction, Brandon Ayuk. So I do think we might need to be a little bit apprehensive there, but man, he looked so good with Dak. He's different, right? And it feels disrespectful to even compare him to Brandon Ayuk, because from a talent perspective, if everything was up all right, just all together with George Pickens, his talent is on a level that he just makes the game look so easy sometimes, like just effortless, right? Unreal. So yeah, realistically, CeeDee Lamb behind Amon-Ra and Drake London. Yes. I could even get behind if I could get a guarantee that Rashee would not be in some sort of legal trouble. I could get on board with pushing Rashee over CeeDee, because I think we've seen enough evidence to know. Now, granted, that also depends on Patrick Mahomes. Almost said Travis Kelce. Granted, that depends on Patrick Mahomes and his health to start off the season. But honestly, I feel good about Patrick getting out there and being ready to start the season, even though it was, obviously a little later than we would love there. But Rashee Rice separated. I mean, we finally saw Rashee and Xavier Worthy, and Xavier Worthy is just not that dude. I just don't think he's that dude. The level of upside that Rashee showed in the very limited time that he had on the field, I think it was just literally 8 games this season. The level of upside that he showed is well deserving of being drafted over a guy like CeeDee Lamb, if CeeDee Lamb has to compete with George Pickens. But again, that's the safety of the fact that I know that, well, I don't know, but I feel good about CeeDee Lamb, not getting suspended. And I don't feel good about that with Rashee Rice. But yeah, that's kind of the limitation. So you're right on that. I don't think it's an overreaction. I don't think it's an overreaction, especially if we can figure out this quarterback situation with Drake London. I don't know. The coaching situation will be interesting in terms of how we can get somebody to coach up Michael Penix and figure things out there in Atlanta. Jeff Rogers, where would you draft Jeanty? Thank you for answering the question. You're the best. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for being loyal to the chat and the channel. I feel good about Ashton Jeanty. I'm not going to lie. I have him ranked as RB8, although I don't think that's that far off where other people have him ranked. So I don't think I'm bullish on him. I think I'm kind of on par. But he showed well. And we're talking about, and this is then. So I talked about this a little bit last week when I talked about the Raiders as a landing spot. I don't mind being a little bit overly optimistic on the Raiders, because if they can get now granted, I'm kind of skeptical of the coach they're going to hire, because from interviews, I'm not having a lot of faith there. But if they can get the right coach and they can make the right moves from a management perspective, they have a dumb amount of cap space. Logically, they should be able to take the same exact path that New England took. Logically, right? Hey, we're first overall pick, so we're getting our quarterback. So you're getting Fernando Mendoza, right? You are changing your offensive, you're changing your head coach, you're changing your offensive coordinator, right? You have a ton of cap space to be able to go out and purchase a wide variety of offensive linemen. And you can draft a wide receiver. This can't be that hard. That can't be that hard. This cannot be that hard. So if they can do all those things, which if I can think of it, I'm not an NFL GM. If I can think through that logical process, I assume that they can think through that logical process. If they can do all those things, I feel real good about Ashton Jeanty. No threat to workload. Unfortunately was not overworked this season, which is good. Hey, I mean, yeah, it was what a season. Was not overworked. He had 266 attempts, 55 receptions, a lot of receptions. So touches, a little tilted up, but I mean, workload on the ground is really what I care about. So 266, very reasonable there for a rookie season. So a bounce back makes a ton of sense. He showed upside. The fact that he was able to get the overall volume that he was impressive. Given the situation, if they can flip that offensive line, I feel really good about Jeanty as a top 10 pick. Oddly enough. Tri Lambs has a prediction for this weekend. Bears over Rams. As a Packers fan, I don't feel good about it. It doesn't make me happy. But I can get on board with that because the Rams have been shaky. And that shakiness did not end last week. So I've tried, I'm a very objective person, right? I put my fandom aside. But it is highly irritating, all the cheese grater nonsense and the arrogance of, and I like Ben Johnson. Hey, like from a coaching perspective, great coach, wonderful, no criticisms. You're so smart, and you deserve Coach of the Year. Congratulations. But I caution you, man, because as we've seen, when you have a lot of games that you win very close, you have a lot of comeback victories. You have a lot of fourth quarter wins. You have a lot of dramatic victories. Ask Washington how that goes. That often regresses back the other way. So don't get too cocky there, Bears, because you won super close games this season. And it is very easy for it to tilt the other direction. But I do like this prediction here, putting aside my irritation with the way that they're acting towards the Packers, because the Rams have unfortunately looked a little bit shaky. And I do like Caleb Williams a lot this week. I like the over on his yardage. I don't feel super good about picking a receiver, but Luther Burden is my preference there. If you got to pick one, I've got the over on his receiving yards. But that combination there, I think they're going to eat up the Rams secondary. Good God. Rams know what they got to do to solve from a defensive perspective, because they are getting thrown all over, unfortunately. So yeah, I think this could be I think this could tilt the direction of the Bears there. From Leaving Mr. Swift, I have DeAndre Swift as RB23. So I feel about the same as I did about him last year. We're just going to carry it on through. He had a good season. Workload wasn't aggressive. Theoretically, it should be him and Kyle Monangai again. I don't see any logical reason they should add any running back in this situation. So I think the Bears are going to run it back. Swift is a very safe RB2, obviously because of the presence of Kyle Monangai not going away there. I cannot believe Roschon Johnson sold us like that. Sold us, man. You irrelevant. But because of the presence of Kyle Monangai, who looked very good, that does cap him from having that consistent top 12 upside, but very safe RB2 pick for sure. I've got him RB23, and I feel good about that. And that should not adjust. There's nobody behind him that should push above him. So that's pretty sticky for me right there. Pretty sticky. Leaving makes a really good point here that the Pats at least had some kind of culture. The Raiders have been a mess for X amount of years. Yes. And I'm counting on Tom Brady to bring that culture. But as he is gallivanting around nightclubs with Alex Earl, I don't know if he's prepared to bring the culture. He might be a little distracted. He might be a little busy. I'm joking. It was like kind of joking. That was weird. Seeing TikTok and football combined. That was weird. But yes, we're hoping that management should logically, they've got logical management there. They should be able to make that pick and change the culture, but they're going to have to do a lot of changing, right? They're going to have to do a lot of changing. It was funny, like Max Crosby getting upset about getting benched, talking about, what is F the pick. Well, Max, no, you're not going to F that pick. And you do need to sit, son, because that first overall pick was highly critical, right? And when we're talking about like the Raiders, 100% did the right thing. And that makes me a little bit encouraged, right? Because if they had got out there and we're planning to win, I would have looked at you sideways like that's a choice, right? That's that's an interesting choice when you absolutely have to have that first overall pick in order to get the quarterback of your dreams. And it worked out perfectly for them because now, again, we have no Dante, which is crazy. We have no Dante Moore in the draft. So it is Fernando Mendoza or bust. Well, maybe Ty Simpson, right? Fernando Mendoza. Yeah. Jeff Rogers, you make a good, the question here is, who do you think the Raiders head coach will be? I don't know. And they're one of my preferred landing spots. Like I have them as my first, that's my dog heaving. I don't know what, who? I don't know what, no, I don't think he threw up. I think we're good. He was trying to get out of the room. He was trapped in here, accidentally. If you guys heard that noise, that was my dog. But when we're looking at the Raiders' next head coach, the problem here is that I think they're a good landing spot. But the only fear that I have with the Raiders head coach position is that I think they might, if they're, again, you can take the Patriots' path. And the Patriots' path, unfortunately, did include a patsy coach to be a 1-year layover while you rebuild. You go out, now granted, the timeline is a little bit off because the Raiders, the Patriots had Jared Mayo in there and they freed up cap space while he was the head coach. Sorry, did I say the Raiders? The Patriots. The Patriots had Jared Mayo in there and they freed up cap space in order to make their moves next season. The Raiders are in the backwards position where they already have the cap space free. So to put in the 1-year holdover until you get your ideal candidate doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I think they might go that direction. So I don't have a read on that because I think they might get a temporary option that they can, or because they're also traumatized by Pete Carroll, they might be looking, just based off the list that I've seen, I think they might be going for somebody who is a little bit more malleable, a little bit more agreeable, a little younger, and more easily molded or agreeable to their vision. Because Pete Carroll and his vision and everything that's coming out was very clear. The amount of control, the fact, they were, complaining about nepotism with his son. I mean, so I think they're trying to lean towards not a super established head coach so they don't run into those issues and that management can guide everything versus coaching guiding, which I think is a fine move. I don't disagree with that though. As long as they get someone in there that can properly develop Fernando Mendoza, right? Obviously, he's very NFL ready, but every young quarterback, no matter how NFL ready, you need a coach that knows how to develop a quarterback, right? So we need someone with some offensive vision. From Henry Odom, Achane versus Cook. Achane versus Cook with no McDaniels. I still lean towards Achane, and the reason for that is that, so all things equal, if I didn't have to worry about, if it was just like straight up, who do I prefer? Cook, no question, regardless. But my problem here is that, with Cook, again, we hit the regression issue. I did not believe he was going to have a regression this year because his workload was very minimal last year. It was actually lower than his 2023 numbers. So there was no reason for there to be any regression. There's reason this year, unfortunately. This will be the highest workload that he has had of his entire career. So I get a little bit worried that we're going to see just a downtick in production and overall effectiveness from him. Not to the point where I'm booting him out or fading him or anything, but I prefer Achane, regardless of, the coaching situation there. I do think that, we feel very positively about the security that he has on that RB1 role. We've seen, obviously, Ollie Gordon look good, Jalen Wright look good, but Devon Achane is the constant there, the constant. So I still have him top 5. He's my RB4. That could flip. I could realistically put JT over him, but I've realized with JT, thought process was correct. Overall results were correct. The quarterback situation was an anomaly, but also got to look at the entire schedule with him because he is so dependent on the ground, right? Although they did an excellent job of integrating him into the pass game. So not a major issue, but the way that schedule was stacked, unfortunately, for the Colts it made JT DOA in the back half of the season, unfortunately. So that was just such a weird occurrence with him. But I still believe in JT. From leaving, Stefanski, if they give him time. I don't want to see Stefanski anywhere, sadly. I'm not a fan. I'm not a believer. And we have zero evidence of him ever being able to develop a quarterback. Like, we could say, offensive guru, offensive minded. We've got zero. Now, granted, him with Brock Bowers would do astronomical numbers. The love that man has for throwing to tight ends would, for the sake of Brock Bowers, I kind of would maybe want to see that season. I don't want to see Kevin Stefanski as a head coach, but Kevin Stefanski with Brock Bowers, knowing Stefanski's tendencies, I'm kind of interested in seeing it. I'm not going to lie. That would be, we might get 2,000 yards from Brock Bowers because all the targets, hey, that would actually be, low key, maybe I can get on board with this as somebody who I do roster Michael Mayer, and I like Michael Mayer a lot. We would, if we had Kevin Stefanski in Vegas, you would see the combination of, they would not draft a wide receiver. You would see the combination of Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer in tandem. You know what? Actually, I can maybe get on board with that from a fantasy perspective because I want to see the vision of that many targets to Brock Bowers. Yeah, you know what? You've talked me into it, leaving. You've talked me into it. I have zero faith he can develop a quarterback. I don't believe it. Don't believe it at all. But that would be cool to see with Brock Bowers, for sure. That scheme with Brock Bowers, that would eat. And then from Jeff Rogers, I could have sworn I've seen the Raiders were wearing leather helmets playing for Pete Carroll, old self. Yeah, unfortunately, Pete, we got to put you out to pasture there. You have not updated with the times, the control they gave him. That should never have happened. We need to free, you know what? And shout out to Seattle. Their management going severely overlooked. Mind you, they got out of Russell Wilson. Now, I like Russell Wilson. No offense to him whatsoever. Love him. Love Sierra. They're my people. But they got out of Russell Wilson at the exact right time and were able to make a bag off of him with Denver. They got out of Geno Smith. They got rid of Pete Carroll to upgrade to Mike McDonald. Like, when you kind of line up everything that they've been doing, I don't really, hey, 10 shout out to them. The moves they have made, fantastic, 10s across the board. Their organization as a whole, you can see that for years now, they have been working towards something, making every single right move humanly possible. And obviously, from a fantasy perspective, there are a lot of frustrating things with that running back room. But regardless, organizationally, you can't deny the fact that they have gotten out of quarterbacks and situations at the right time and coaching right and made the right moves. Very, very impressive. They have been consistently correct. So if they won a Super Bowl, I'd be highly impressed because they've made all the right moves. But yeah, that wraps things up. This is a great show, guys. I appreciate the chat. This is a very chat driven show. I think we covered a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about, though. We didn't get to talk about things. We'll carry on to next week. We did not get to talk about George Kittle's injury and how that affects. That's actually pretty critical. How George Kittle's injury is going to affect fantasy football. We'll talk about that next week. Aaron Rodgers and his future. We did not talk at all about Mike Tomlin, Matt LaFleur, the Eagles, Kevin Pasula. We talked a little bit about AJ Brown. Yeah. One thing. Congratulations to Adam Thielen and his retirement. Congratulations to him. Wonderful career. Good time to get out. Shout out to him. Those were good times with him. I'm still cackling over that comment, Jeff Rogers, of the Raiders in leather helmets under Pete Carroll. That one is going to stick with me. That was good. Shout out to you. That was amazing. But my dog wants to get out this room and wants me to end this show immediately. Lots of anger there. Lots of anger. I can see it in his eyes. No kidding. He's sweet. Ooh, he's sweet. But I appreciate you guys tuning in here. Appreciate the chat as always. You guys are awesome. Again, this is the Dear Miss Fantasy podcast. And if you ever want to get your questions in early, just send them to me. Drop in the comments, say you want it on the podcast, or tweet it to me, or whatever, exit to me, whatever. Drop me the comments and whatever, so I can make sure I get them on the show. Other than that, I appreciate you all tuning in. If you could subscribe to the podcast, it's available across all podcast platforms and YouTube channel. If you could subscribe as well. Shout out to Player Profiler, who this show is through as well. Other than that, I appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you so much. I will talk to you again next week. Enjoy the divisional round. I think we're getting good games here. I tell you what, man. If nothing else, we have gotten fantastic games so far. So I'm looking forward to this weekend and what they bring to us. So enjoy the football, guys. I will talk to you all later. Good luck. Good luck if you're running bets in DFS. I am. That's why I say good luck. I got to go make some DFS lines. All right. Bye, guys. I will talk to you.